Hello, my name is Grian, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a floating island. But before we start, you need to make sure you have a couple of things. You need Voxel Sniper and World Edit. If you don't know what these are, they're plugins for your server that allow you to do the commands that I'm using. Okay, so let's get straight into it. The first command that you're going to need is B over D1. You need to use the Gunpowder and set your block to stone using V space stone. You then need to set your brush size to whatever you want, but I start with a bigger brush size, so I use 10 to begin with. I layer a blob all over using the Gunpowder, right clicking, and the shape that you make on the floor will determine what shape your island's going to be in the middle. It will become clear later why. So you continue right clicking, raising up the mountain out of the ground, and slowly making your brush size smaller so that you generate peaks. You may notice that I have a separate blob that's not attached to the bigger one. This is because I want to create a smaller floating island next to my big one so that they complement each other. Floating islands tend to look nicer if they have little ones around them, so it really focuses on the big one. So again, I continue using that same technique, right clicking on the mountains and making my brush size smaller and smaller to get to the top of the peaks. Now, Voxel Sniper isn't particularly accurate at very small sizes, so once I've got to B1, that's the smallest size you can get to, the peaks flatten off at the top. So what I'm going to have to do is finish that bit off by hand, but first I just need to finish getting all the peaks up to the height that I want. It's important to make this as tall as you want or as small as you want. I find that the more stretched out it is, the better it looks. Now from this point on, you might want to just make sure that you use B over again with the Gunpowder, just making sure that everything is right, because after this stage we won't be able to edit this very much, so it's important that you get this right. So now that I've done that, I feel like it's necessary, as I said earlier, to go and finish my peaks by hand. There's not a huge technique to this, but I do tend to raise the block in the middle up to where I want the peak to be, and then using the blocks adjacent to it in a cross, I then try and complement the steepness up to that peak. It's kind of the same every time, so there's not much variation, but on the bigger ones I do tend to go even higher, just making sure that everything's in proper scale with each other. And once that's done, everything there is kind of ready. You need to now select the entire region that these peaks are on. This is very important that you pay attention here. And you need to go onto the bottom layer and do // copy. Once you've done that, you need to go and fly into the air where you want your sky island to be. You need to look into the air and type // flip. You need to look directly up. Once you've done that, you do // paste, and there it is. This is actually the bottom of the sky island we've been working on this entire time, which is why I said you can't edit it. So this is what the bottom of the peak looks like. Voxel Sniper doesn't work upside down, that's why we need World Edit in order to flip it. This is probably the most complex part of the build, and it's done now. So from here, we then use exactly the same technique that we used while making the bottom half, but we use it on the top half now. The same command of B over D1 and raising the mountains instead of out of the ground, out of the bottom of our peaks. Once we've done that, you might want to make sure that you have land to use on your sky island. So you may notice that I've left some of it quite flat, and I'm just sort of doing around the edges larger peaks and mountains so that they complement the bottom, and I try and sort of match the scale of the peaks I made underneath. Once I've done that on the flatter areas, I tend to add just a gentle slope or a hill, so I have something to build on. Now I realise I've probably gone very fast when trying to explain it, but once you get your head around the commands, it is quite easy to grasp. And if you need extra help, you can check out my Voxel Sniper and World Edit tutorial that cover the basics of everything I'm using here anyway. Okay, so back to the build. I'm then generating the peaks again using B1, just trying to get it as high as I can to within the smallest block that I can, but of course I am going to have to finish off the peaks by hand because Voxel Sniper isn't particularly accurate. So we've essentially repeated exactly the same process, give or take a few differences in shape, that we did with the bottom half. The only difference is that these peaks may be a little bit smaller, and on top of that, we may have actually created a little bit of mess underneath the island by using the be over command, because voxel is a little bit messy sometimes. And get rid of that with be melt. You can also avoid this by making it void under. And while we have the be melt be fill on our clipboard for the arrow and gunpowder, just go round the sides of your island, making sure that it's all nice and smooth and the transition from the middle to the bottom doesn't have this ring around it, and it has a nice smooth transition. Once you've done that, you then want to go back to using be over, but this time you want to put in a D3 so that you have a depth of 3, and you want to change your block to grass using V grass. You then right click all over your island and overlay it with grass. This is the top soil layer, and then underneath we want to texture it so that it transitions and it isn't just a stone dirt divide. What we want now is to use B space SBMM. VR stone to replace the stone, and V dirt. We go round, adding the dirt in little splatters all the way round, and then we just change our block to cobblestone, and then do a layer a little bit lower than the dirt, and then again with clay. Once we've done that, we've created the texture that goes down underneath on the spires. Apologies if you find that this is going a little bit fast, but I'm not trying to bore you, and again, you aren't supposed to be copying me. I'm showing you the technique, and if you have to, you can go back over and look at all the different commands. Okay, I'm now going to give you the command on screen, which is kind of long, and this is to create grass. I won't say them all, but hopefully you can follow them on screen and right click with your gunpowder, using them everywhere. If you don't feel comfortable using this or you keep messing up, just use bone meal. It might take you a little bit longer, but that's fine. Then I move on to use B tree to just place vanilla Minecraft trees all over the island. And then once I've done that, I also use B big tree to set it to a different tree and give that little bit of variation. Once I've done that, I then move in and give it the final touch of every single sky island. A nice little waterfall, and I consider that completely finished. As you can see, this technique, once you get down all the commands and understand the basics of Voxel Sniper, is fairly simple. It is a step-by-step, and that's why I thought I'd do a tutorial on it, because I thought my way of making sky islands was pretty unique, and that I thought people would find it very easy to make their own as long as they could get their hands on World Edit and Voxel Sniper. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know. And if you have any more suggestions, this again was another suggestion and I just happened to have a nice idea on how to film it, please let me know in the comment section below. Goodbye!